Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I've got an amazing interview for you. From a college dropout with only $1,000 to building the 30th top real estate team in America and selling over 7,000 homes. This is the story of Joshua Smith, the powerhouse behind GSD Mode. Not only have I been a personal fan of Joshua Smith, it's an honor to actually be able to interview him to find out his exact strategies that carried him through multiple market crashes, how he's coached over 5,000 agents to success, creating $20,000 a month producers in less than 6 months. So if you're a realtor looking to grow your business, scale your team, or simply get inspired, this episode is pure gold. So today, before we jump into the interview, I want to make sure you know how to connect with both myself and our guest, Joshua Smith. So look at the links below in the video. All of Josh's direct links are listed right below in the description, so you can plug into his systems, follow his journey, and even explore ways to directly partner with Joshua Smith. Now, this is the exciting part. You do not have to choose between Joshua's path or my path. You can actually partner with both of us by combining Joshua's world-class team building coaching strategies with my probate real estate expertise through absolute top dollar. So make sure you check out those links in the description. Reach out, let's connect, and talk about how we can make together your own success story. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's incredible interview with Joshua Smith from GSD Mode. Hello everyone, Carolyn Castillo here with Absolute Top Dollar. Today I have the incredible honor of interviewing Joshua Smith from GSD Mode on our podcast today, and we're so excited for him to be with us and break down all of his successes. Thank you so much for being here, Josh.
Yeah, no, the honor's all mine. Super excited for this.
Thank you so much. And for those of you that don't know you, even though you're a celebrity in YouTube, everybody knows you. Okay. For those of you that don't know you, would you give a brief description of who you are and what you mean to the real estate industry?
Yeah, so, like most things in my life, it's all happened kind of unintentionally on accident. So I grew up in the health and fitness industry. My dad owned and operated gyms for 30 years. That's what I wanted to do. But I was 23 years old, college dropout, broke as a joke. I wanted to start my own gym, but didn't have the funds to do so because that's a expensive, venture to take on. So I jumped into real estate. I'm like, okay, what has a low barrier to entry that I could do well with? I had like $1,000 in my name, didn't want to have to go back to college. So I was like, okay, well, real estate's it. Now this was also 2005. So the perception of those not in real estate was everybody was making a ton of money in the business. So, but I've always been one that like will work my ass off. I love people. I love sales. I've been doing sales for a long time. So like, hey, I'm going to jump into real estate, just live frugally, work my butt off and raise the money for 4 or 5 years where I can go open up a health club. But then very quickly I discovered that real estate became my obsession. Health and fitness was my passion. So jumped in the business, found the right mentor. Like I had the work ethic, the passion, the desire to make something of myself to succeed. So I had the why. I just needed the right roadmap. So I found a great mentor, jumped in, did 48 deals my first year, wanted to double going into my second, knew I needed leverage, knew I needed admin. Luckily, I had years of experience of building sales teams in the health and fitness industry. So teams weren't really a thing then, but I knew how to build a team. So I just, took what I knew there, brought it over to real estate. So I hired my first time full assistant at the end of my first year. That then allowed me to go to 103 deals the next year. Then I hit another capacity. So that's when I officially started my team by adding on agents going into my second year. And since then it's been a wild journey. So built the 30 top team in the country, sold 7,000 homes, and it's
Wow.
been filled of a lot of ups and downs and everything in between. But this industry's changed every aspect of my life. It's given me, it's given me purpose. So I can't fathom a better vehicle than to be where we are in this amazing industry that we're all choose to be in.
In real estate, yeah. And it's always so interesting to find out so many people that have gotten into real estate are high school dropouts. So, what was it for you? Was it just that school wasn't really for you? Like you didn't,
Yeah, and I apologize if I misspoke. I did finish high school. I went to college and just quickly realized it wasn't for me.
So college
It was
dropout.
just, yeah, it was just, I just didn't see it being the vehicle. Well, okay. The honest answer is I didn't really think I was going to go to college, but my girlfriend, who we started dating at 16, who, now is my wife, she was going to college and I was insecure thinking that, okay, she's going to go off to college, have this experience. If I don't get into college and have this experience with her, like I'm going to get left behind. So I really just went to college just for that, but then I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to do this. I might as well make a degree. And this was a long time ago where it was like, I'm from a really small town. So if you don't go to college, you're going to be a nobody. So I was like, okay,
Hmm.
let me jump into this thing. But then very quickly, I just realized like I'd go into, my economics class because I was going for business management. I was like, man, this just doesn't add up. I was like, just they're real life business experience. Because again, my father owned and operated gyms for 30 years. So, and not that he was massively successful, but he did pretty good, did well, did okay, right? So, supplied a life for us and, had two locations, but I was able to see the back end of business and know enough where I was like, hey, I'm not getting the education I really need, to this to be anything. So I just felt I was pissing away my time and money. So I just went back into sales and back into doing what I was doing.
And somehow you kept your girlfriend, made her your wife.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just stayed in town until she graduated. Then we got engaged and got married at 23. And
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And so you were able to see like the background of your dad, being a business owner. Not everybody gets that experience, to actually see a business owner, all the struggles, the ups, the downs, and some people grow up with you're going to college, this is your university, this is where you're headed. But also, I don't know if you know about Ryan Seahart. Ryan Seahart, he got his real estate license because he couldn't make it in the acting business.
yep,
So it's like people get into real estate thinking like it's just gonna be like, oh yeah, I'll just get into real estate real quick, and look at him, he ended up becoming, that was his legacy, and the same with you, that's incredible. And same with me, that's what I did. I was like, yeah, I'll just get into this, and then, it's funny how real estate changes people's lives, uh,
yep.
so very cool. So you get into real estate, and what year was it that you actually closed your first year 48 deals? I mean, was that like what year was that?
So 2005, when I first jumped in, did 48 deals that year, then 103
That
the
was
next.
that was the bless you. That was the high market at that point.
Yeah, 2000.
2005. That was when everything was
Yeah, it was
similar
very
like
similar to like 2021, 2022, where there, you'd have like in our market, and it was a boom, but in a different way. I mean, we had a lot of multiple offers, maybe not like the 50 or 100 that we were seeing post COVID. That boom made 2005, was at a larger scale than 2005, but it was crazy.
Mhm.
Like with like new builds, we'd have 100 people camping out at a new build lot and they were doing lottery systems. You had sellers just begging every way they possibly could to get out of deals because the next month their home would be worth 25 more grand.
Mhm.
So I got a couple years of a taste of that. The good news was though is, still was like I was pulling on a blank sheet of paper and trying to, figure it out every day that when the market corrected, I didn't have any bad habits yet. Because it didn't just correct. It went from the biggest boom we ever saw to the biggest, real estate crash in recorded history. So I went from one extreme to the next, and we did very well during those times. But I'll say a lot of it is I had an amazing mentor. I don't know if, because again, I've always had a hard work ethic, which sometimes a virtual, sometimes it's been a vice as well, but I needed to be pointed in the right direction. Because again, I was 23 years old. Yeah, I had, I was able to get experience of watching my father, but it wasn't like I was ever a business owner. I was always a W-2 employee. I didn't know what I didn't know. So the one thing I was smart enough was, to notify, like identify like who was the biggest bat. Like I didn't care about splits. I didn't care about fees. Like who's the biggest badass in my market that I can go work for. Now I didn't want to join a team because I knew that, hey, in order for me to scale this, I'm gonna have to create some element of my own team, to scale this up properly, at least based on the interviews that I was doing and studying the top of the industry as I was going to real estate school. But luckily, the gentleman that I found was not only one of the top agents in the country, top team leaders in the country, but also loaned a local brokerage. So I was able to work on the brokerage side, but get his mentorship where, he was able to create that roadmap for me, taught me how to read markets, taught me how to adapt, really kind of set a lot of that foundation for me, in those early phases.
Mhm. So in that 2005, when you first had gotten in, was it similar like what we just previously experienced, where almost anybody could be kind of successful in real estate in the sense that like, houses were just selling like this and, buyers were just buying like crazy. You got into it in that season of kind of blessing.
Yep.
The
Yep.
real
Like as
estate.
example, we bought our first house in 2004 for 140, I don't know, 140,000 some change. A year later at the peak in 2005, it was worth like 275. So it's crazy. Like just things were just, but yeah, but it wasn't as easy as, yeah, everybody was buying, but it's tons of multiple offers. I mean, it was just a crazy seller's market. So there was exponentially more buyers looking to buy than there was, sellers with homes available for sale. And being a buyer's agent, like I didn't list a home for my first year in real estate.
Mm,
All those deals were just from open houses. Day one, I just started doing open houses, do, 7 to 10 a week, and why I say 7 to 10 is, on the weekends, I would stack multiple open houses. And people always say, oh man, like you got lucky, you got your first client, you ended up being a cash buyer my first 4 days. But my first 4 days, I did 4 open houses,
yeah.
done four, so, I just find the harder that I work, the luckier that I get. But yeah, there was other challenges, just like anybody that was in the market in 2021, 2022. You remember how competitive it was when you represent a buyer. You might have to write on 10 properties to find them one.
Well, that's what I was, the similarities of that market and this market are very similar because you have a
Yep.
lot of agents that just got into the business maybe in 2020, 2021, and they just went on that magical unicorn ride that we've all been on. And then now, I'm in Florida, you're in Arizona, so I know we have very similar real estate markets right now where we had the big booms and now we're having like a bust, if you will.
Yep.
So it could be very similar than what you experience is like it's easy when the market is easy and everybody's just saying yes to you and you throw a house up for sale and you get multiple offers and you're like, I'm the best agent in the world. And then now you put the listing up and you keep going back and checking, if maybe you press the wrong button or why isn't anybody calling. So how is that like shift from, being so like rapidly successful and then now everybody losing their houses and short sales and all of that? What was that transition like?
Yeah. So again, luckily, I had a great mentor that, when everybody was saying even in '06 that, oh, it's just slowing down a little bit, like it's not going to crash, and he was like, hey, look, this thing's going to get ugly. And he was, able to guide me to get, now he didn't teach me necessarily how to do them, but like, do we help Google? Like all you have to do is point, like, where do I go? Like it's Wayne Gretzky, don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where it's going. Okay, I'm going to
Mm,
focus on what's working right now, but what do I need to prepare for next? And he told me short sales and REO. So I started, learning short sales, getting into short sales. In the beginning, they were a massive pain in the butt, but just knowing that, hey, they were increasing and it was going to be a thing that I was pretty confident that was going to be, a big part of our life for some years to come. So I got versed in short sales. And then just started doing everything I could to get in with banks, So then when the market actually absolutely imploded, yeah, I was in with, Fannie Direct and in with a lot of these banks. Now it took me 6 months of, prospecting multiple hours every day to get my first bank. It wasn't just like, oh, I just, it was work to get in with those. But actually, so my first mentor used to always tell me, he's like, great agents make way more in down markets than they do good markets. It never made sense to me until I experienced my first, severe down market. But then it was like, okay, now it makes sense, right? Because you can't just go list with your cousin or friend that's going to give you maybe a discount that just got their license that can put the sign in the ground. Like it takes a skill set now to sell properties, negotiate deals, to know markets, know how to price properties, right? And so it didn't make sense when he was first telling it to me. But again, I was, young and naive and didn't know a lot of things. Um, but it allowed me to position myself really well where, and just to give an idea of, how this works is like a lot of people think that, oh, well, I'm just, going to go from traditional and then just transition into, pre-foreclosure short sale, then transition to investors. Then if you look at this journey, it was like, okay, 2005, 2006. Well, 2005 was all open houses for me. Then it got to the point where I'm like, man, I'm spending like 10 hours a week just begging other agents for their open houses, because I didn't have my own listing. So then I was like, let me just start going after expireds, allocate the same amount of time just so I had my own storefronts. I didn't really care about the listings. I mean, I wanted, obviously do a great job for my clients, but to me, it was just, I was crushed with open houses. I just need to solve that bottleneck of never making sure I can't do an open house because I didn't have a storefront. So then I started, so in the second year, then I'm, expireds and open houses. And those are crushing it, but they slowly start getting less and less. So I'm seeing the market, transition change. So I'm still focusing all that time on there, but now I have to add an extra 2 hours to my plate to mastering prospecting for getting into short sales and REO. And this, the traditional business started kind of slowing down. The distress started kind of coming up, and eventually they surpass each other. But at no point in time did I ever stop my traditional business. It just came to the point that that was maybe, 10% of my business and distress was 90%. Because again, I was in one of the hardest hit markets in the country, at that time. So about 90% of our business. And to put it into context, at my peak, I had 35 different banks and outsourcers. So I'd have, 400 listings in my inventory any given time. So it took a lot of time and, an amazing team to be able to manage that. Well, then all of a sudden, okay, traditional business is still, staying stagnant. Well, then pre-foreclosure, so short sales and REO starts dissipating. So then I'm like, well, what the hell's next? Right. So I'm checking with my title companies, checking with everybody in the industry, just keeping a pulse on the market at a very high level, like I always do. And then, okay, I'm starting to see a lot for the first time. You're seeing these big institutional investors come in and buy um, residential real estate, like your Invitation Homes, which was acquired by Blackstone, right? Or the set up the fund through Blackstone. So it gets to a point where they're buying 500 units a month in my market, not through me direct, but in my market. So then I'm like, okay, well, how do I then get in with them? So then as I'm still sustaining my traditional business and sustaining my, because traditional business hasn't ticked up, REO short sales is coming down. So knowing that if this is coming down and this isn't coming up, okay, like I'm going to be in trouble if I don't pivot to the next thing. So then from there, we're seeing that this institutional investor purchases going up and up and up. So again, back to the drawing board, learning that business, prospecting for hours every single day. So I'm adding additional hours to my plate to figure this stuff out. So I'm already working 10, 12 hours a day. I got to now work 14 to add these things in. So sometimes I'm sharing this because it's like, hey guys, like sometimes during pivots, we gotta, like especially like in another pivot we're going through right now. You might have to work your 10 hours a day and then another 2 hours on top of what you're already doing to master and get in with the new next thing. And then next thing you know, we're doing, 40, 50 units a month with institutional investors, and then that starts, slowing down as the market corrects, but then traditional business starts going up, you know, um, and,
Wow.
and my first mentor told me, he's like, Josh, if you want your business to always go up through your whole entire career, always grow, always expand, he's like, get damn good at acquiring and servicing traditional buyers and sellers, get damn good at acquiring and servicing distressed, get damn good at acquiring and servicing investors, because one of those is always going to be strong, right? And then from there, you got to get damn good at reading markets and being able to identify, which one you need to focus on. And those are just, thank God during that time, yeah, they were extremes, but it taught me that lesson at a high level very quickly. And that's why my business has been able to continue to grow for 20 years straight.
That is literally incredible. Like that is out of this world, how all your transitions that you went from open houses then looking for those foreclosures and investors. And it's not that easy to get into those banks. I've looked into all of that. I was, before I got really all in on probate, I was working a lot of pre-foreclosures and to get it, well, we haven't had the foreclosure boom that we had back then. I mean, in your opinion, do you think that we're going to enter something like that? I mean, do you think that's in our cards, or are they going to just stabilize it and keep us all kind of mediocre here?
No, well, look, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can tell you right now is that consumers in a way worse off position than pre-great financial crisis, way worse off position than pre-great um, the Great Depression.
Yeah.
So at no point in recorded history has it been this unfortunately be alive. No point in recorded history have we seen consumers' debt versus savings gap be this wide and accelerate at the speed that it's accelerating. So, like I look for, okay, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Yeah, right. So I think that worst case scenario, this very easily could be worse than the Great Financial Crisis and worse than the Great Depression, not just from the real estate market, but economically. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm going to prepare for both. So I'm preparing for it for sure. Now, some of the differences. And we started seeing this in 2012, where you started seeing, okay, HUD, these GSEs, So HUD started this where, okay, 20% of their institutional investor makeup got bought out, acquired by the big three, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. Now we've seen the same thing with Fannie Mae. We've seen the same thing with Freddie Mac. So what HUD started doing back then is instead of taking so much of their REO properties to market, they started packaging them up and sell them direct to these, big private equity firms. So we're seeing more and more of that. We're also seeing now what a lot of people don't have awareness of, like let's just say Fannie Mae is an example. And what people don't realize is these GSEs own about 85% of all loans out there. Right? So we've essentially, like even real estate, it's kind of turning into college where like all the loans have been now, taken over by, government backed entities. So what they're doing now is they're taking a lot of this non-performing loans and they're selling them direct to private equity firms. So that private equity firms are acquiring all those non-performing assets, non-performing, that non-performing paper. So when they foreclose on that, now that the private equity firms have the choice of, do we do a disposition, offload this property, or do we keep it in our portfolio? So it could just be a grab for these, private equity firms to just acquire more and more real estate. I know you kind of go down some of those rabbit holes like I do, right? You'll own nothing and be happy, which seems like they're doing some back end grabs there. So I don't know, to be honest with you, like if we're going to see that same foreclosure wave, at some point, they're doing everything they can to kick down the can down the road. Government has proven that they have, they're not like they'll do whatever it takes to bail things out anymore. Yeah, right. Like okay, like during the Great Financial Crisis, we were told that it was like what a $5 or $6 trillion bailout. Well, they don't have to disclose certain things for 10 years. So Levy Economics came out in 2023 when they finally got their hands on the data with what the data that they can grab. Because of the private entity, they don't have to disclose everything, right? But they discovered that it was a $29 trillion bailout during that time. So I don't know. Again, it becomes there's just so much manipulations in the market. Now, at some point, you can keep kicking the can down the road, but eventually you run out of road. And my best guess is we're probably close to that happening. So yeah, I think with the real estate market, and we're seeing it unwind before our eyes right now, but just like in '06, people are like, oh, that's not going to happen. Like, okay. Yeah, right. Like who the hell's gonna like three things have to happen, right? Interest rates have to come back down to 2%, which is I'm pretty sure it's illegal for the Federal Reserve to go in there and acquire. It's unconstitutional, illegal for them to do what they did during now it was a 100-year pandemic or whatever they want to say it was, the reasons for, but for them to manipulate the markets and buy $90 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities like they did to artificially lower interest rates to that level. I don't know if we're going to see that again, but okay, either interest rates need to come back down to like 2%, or incomes need to go up by 40% to make the market affordable, which isn't going to happen. Now we're seeing, we've got the largest big business bankruptcy that we've seen in 2025 since the great financial crisis. So, big businesses are filing bankruptcy. They're laying off people left and right, you know, so then the only other thing is, okay, like to come back to affordability where people can afford homes, is for prices to come down dramatically. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Unless there's some power grab where these institutions buy all these homes and we just become renters, become a renter nation. I don't know, but let's just assume that that's not going to take place and not happen at the level that it would need to for that. And I don't know, I don't want to say never, but I don't see that happening. I could be just me being naive, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any choice but prices to come down on a massive front, 40, 50% in most markets to create that affordability again, because the average American is just so outpriced in the marketplace.
Yeah, I heard Trump, that's what Trump had said. He's like, everybody just needs to reduce down 40% and we'll all be good, you know? And
Yeah.
in my market, that's all pretty much all throughout Florida, we literally doubled in value. So like any listing that I go on, if I go and look what was the value of that listing in 2020 or 2021, we've literally like 50% increase in the last 4 to 5 years, you know?
Yeah.
So it's all this fake equity that's built up in the marketplaces. The average, real estate investment is only supposed to appreciate like 6 to 8% a year. So you talk about basically we've appreciated 25% over the last 5 years, when I've been going out and taking listings, I'm saying, yes, you see that this sold for, 400, 400, 400, but you'll take as the market keeps going, the sellers are just dropping, right? Because they need to sell. The people that do need to sell, they're getting out of the market. So you get a job relocation, you get it, any of these things, people have to go, right? It's not like they want to go, they have to go, and they're pulling down that market. And I've seen it like throughout Florida. We work in South Florida and North Florida, and literally it's happening so fast, Josh. Like when you're taking these listings, and I'm now printing some of these when I go out on listing appointments and showing them this is what everything was selling for 6 months ago, and this is what it's selling for now. And you can literally see, like in some cases, $50,000 less, $100,000 less, So this is like a very, very dynamic market right now. If you're in some of these markets that we're experiencing this, you can't put listings up from what you see, other people are listing them at. That's why we're seeing so many expireds, we're seeing so many canceled, which again gives us the opportunity, right? As agents, if we understand this and we know what's happening, then we can sit down with those sellers and say, listen, you can't price it like everybody else, may
Yeah.
look like we're losing a little bit, at the beginning, but we're the ones that are going to get out of the market while everybody else is left holding the bag. It's really incredible, like your insight into the market, because I don't think a lot of people see it like that, where these institutional, like, because that's the weird part, is where is all the foreclosures? If the market is so bad, where are they? Where are all these foreclosures? Because like in my market, you're not seeing like in 2008, 2009, you was maybe like 400, thousand foreclosures. Like, I mean, it was like extreme, but it's a little bit elevated, but it's nothing extreme. And so that's the hard part about everybody that's kind of watching it, is we don't have the privy to really understand what's happening at maybe a higher level, which is what you're talking about, them selling the mortgages to these private equity firms, and then the private equity firms are then doing what they want to do with it. So will the average American even have access to even buy those foreclosures or even be a part of that transaction if it's all handled behind the curtain?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, not at the level that we need or we've seen, because again, these private equity firms, I mean, they own the papers, so they can pick and choose. Hey, do we want to keep this as part of our portfolio, write off the loss, or does it not make sense to keep part of our portfolio and to list it? So, yeah, they get kind of first dibs at that. And if you look at a lot of these private equity firms, I mean, they're trying to, snag up as much residential real estate as they can. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. But here's the thing is, like, I don't want anybody to ever operate from a place of fear. Right? People are always buying and selling real estate. There's always massive opportunity, and then, too, it's like, okay, we're sharing a lot of these things. And look, I'm a very curious human being, but like knowing some of this stuff doesn't necessarily help my real estate business grow. Yeah, right. So what you got to focus on is, okay, where's the biggest opportunity currently at? Like, I'm not gonna sit there and mentally masturbate, if you will, and think about like where's the market going to be in 2 or 3 years. So where's the biggest opportunities at currently, and then where are we going to be probably within the next 6 months based on these opportunities, you know, um, and then pivot, shift, and adapt, from there. Like, control what you can control. And
Yeah.
there's, I always look at real estate as it's like a science experiment. You got the control, and then you got the variable. So the control is, okay, the real estate in your area, in your market, that doesn't change. What does change is who's buying it, who's selling it, why they're buying it, why they're selling it, where they're coming from, where they're going. And you and I recently talked about this on when I interviewed on my podcast. The biggest listing wave that will far trump any of the, REO that we saw in the past, or what we'll see with these private equity firms is probate. I mean, just the sheer mass. I mean, you got 75 million units held of residential real estate. So 50% of all residential real estate is owned by boomers and silent gen. So that's 75 million units. 40% of them, unfortunately, won't be here in the next 10 years. And then, so over the next, 2.5, 3 decades, we're talking 52 plus million listings hitting the market. Because if you look at probate, according to Schwab, when they've done their research study on this, 70% of families that inherit these estates take it to market. They don't keep these properties, which I know you know this, Carolyn, but anybody that's watching or listening to this, just so that 75 million, 52 million hitting the market, new inventory, it's going to be the biggest listing wave that we will probably ever see in recorded history.
Yeah, and
So I think,
it won't have the private equities won't have their tentacles wrapped around it, right? Because it will be an open, fair exchange. It will be an exchange of hands, not where it's happening behind closed doors, right? Where some of these, but I would be interested, what about these institutional buyers? Are they still out there? Are they still buying things up? Do you?
I have not seen them buying on market like pre 2022. From 2012 to 2022, we were representing numerous of these, doing 20 plus acquisitions a month like clockwork with them, right? But then as soon as, because a lot of people think that, oh, they come and they buy cash. No, they don't. It might be cash on the contract, but they might be putting 30% out of their own cash, but then they have a direct line with the Federal Reserve or with Goldman Sachs as a direct line with the Federal Reserve. So their cost of capital is tied to the overnight rate. So when everybody talks about, oh, the Federal Reserve is going to lower rates, so mortgage rates are going to come down, no, they're two separate things. You got the overnight rate, that controls like credit cards, maybe auto loans, it does control, interest rates, but not on mortgages. Mortgages is at least purchase mortgages is a debt instrument, and that is set by mortgage-backed security purchase demand, and they're two separate things, right? So a perfect example of this is, okay, during January 1st of 2023, Federal Reserve starts their quantitative tightening protocol. Now, for the first 6 months, like, hey, we're not going to touch the overnight rate. We're just going to start backing off from being the primary and essentially the only buyer of mortgage-backed securities during the pandemic. So we saw a 0.5% increase on on mortgage rates between January. So we went from like a 3% rate to a 6% rate, 6.5% rate during that time when the overnight rate didn't change. That's where they started with their quantitative tightening, was backing off on buying debt, so mortgage-backed securities and other debt. And then they started, adjusting up the overnight rate. So anyway, though, yeah, I mean, they essentially came to us in 2022 and like, we're done. Yeah, right. And in 2022, going into 2023, because if you think about it, if they're buying these on a 5% cap rate and we're at a 1% where they're getting their money and it goes up to a 5% overnight Fed fund rate, well, essentially they've lost their cap rate overnight, right? So so I've not seen them buying on the open market. Now, again, they're going through the back door and buying the paper, right, which I'm sure they're getting a hell of a lot better deals on than if they're buying on the open market right now. So, yeah, I haven't seen, at least in our market, and I don't know of any market that they're really actively buying in
Right,
at this
right.
current moment.
Right. So this is, and I respect you say don't go live in the fear, don't live in the negative, and that's, we have to live in the positive, But it is also important for agents to really understand, because I'm out speaking with agents all the time and they're like, "Oh, it's amazing, everything's great," and it's like a little disconnected from reality right now, so I think it is, we have to talk about this as agents, so that we can be real with each other and just don't have, the fluff conversations. If we were to be having this podcast, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, all he would be doing is like high-fiving and fist pumping because everybody was just making tons of money and it was genuinely a hell of a positive market, but we're genuinely in a pullback, in my market now. I mean, I'm seeing everybody that purchased in 2022, 2023, 2024 is underwater. They're
Yep.
underwater. They can't sell their houses. So us as agents, we have to start educating ourselves on short sales. We have to start educating ourselves on how to navigate a foreclosure, right? So the bank doesn't take your house. Like, what are the options that we can do? Tell me a little bit about what you coach agents on, and like, so you have all this experience, and you talked about at the beginning of the podcast having a mentor, and I think like having a mentor like you is the key to these bad markets. This is how we're going to get through the market, with people like you that have kind of like already gone through the storm and said, can guide people on how to maneuver this. Tell me a little bit about how you're currently helping agents, navigate this market right now.
Yeah. So, and look, there's different stages to our real estate success journey. Stage number one is just about making money. Like, how do we make enough money to be able to, you know, create the opportunity, like to live well, provide for our family, and then once you solve the money problem, then the next phase is, okay, now we got to solve the time problem. Then we want to create freedom. So there's different stages. In each different stage, there's going to be a different set of skill sets and things that we need to focus on. But for today's, let's just focus on the money, because that's what most people need right now, right? Dude, it is. It's so I was at a soccer tournament on this weekend with my wife and my son. I got three kids, but it's just my wife and my son. My other two are working, and I don't really eat fast food, almost never. But It was just in a situation where the tournament was done, it was a long day. We want to get out of town, get on the road, get on the freeway, get back home. So, we had limited options. So we stopped at McDonald's for three of us, $57.
Not McDonald's.
Right? Just mind blowing, right? So it's not just that the average realtor's hurting. The average person is just getting ripped apart, and just so you guys know at a high level what's going on, and I'll get into the granular with what you can do as a real estate agent. Is so this is a different mentor, but one of my business mentors has not been in real estate, owns a bunch of real estate, but not been in real estate. But and this is a dude by the age of 40, he had built and exited from over $1 billion worth of companies. The last company sold for 792 million. So this is a very, provenly, successful, but also very, very intelligent human being. And he said to me a lot of years ago, he was like, hey, look, in the very near future, we're going to see the evaporation of the middle class. He goes, the middle class was born during the Industrial Revolution when we needed a strong middle class. Now we're seeing the deindustrialization of the world. There's no need for the middle class. We step deeper and deeper into technology. And so he goes, there's going to be two classes, the haves and the have-nots. Now the have-nots is going to be like 95% of the population. The haves will be about 5% of the population. And this is what we're seeing unwind before our eyes. So you got to pick and choose, what side of that equation do I want to be on? I don't know about you guys, but I'm working a harder, more focus, more intensity, more hours than I ever have in my 20-year career, because I know what side of that equation I want to do everything I can to be on. So I'd recommend right now, everybody work your ass off. Don't be feeling sorry for yourself. Oh, I need a day off. Oh, I need balance. Like that cannot exist right now if you're serious about this, right? Like do whatever it takes to set you and your family up to be on whichever side of that equation that you want to be on. I don't want to be on the side of the have not, right? I've been there too much in my life, too long in my life, and it sucks. So, but this is why, like in a lot of markets, and this is why we see, these posts, oh, the median price point's going up. Well, okay, the median is, what skews that off is, okay, the affluent, the rich we're seeing the biggest transference of wealth ever to ever exist, ever in history. So people are getting massively richer or massively poor. There's no in between. So like even in my market, like the zip codes, like the highest price zip codes, the most luxury real estate, that shit is just so flying off the handle. It's, the upper middle class. It's like anything under $1 million is just getting murdered and crushed, right? And that's what we're, seeing right now. So we gotta kind of, again, have awareness of what's going on and how we need to position ourselves. Then from there, the biggest thing that I'm getting reached out to for those that are, like, look, dude, if you're not willing to put in the work and you're not focused, can't help you. Nobody can help you. Nobody else, but you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if that was you, right? So I know that you're a hard worker, that you're focused, that you want to do what it takes, right? So then from there, the biggest thing that I hear is, hey man, I'm doing all this lead gen, I'm doing all this lead follow up, I'm working my butt off, but nobody has urgency. People are sitting on the fence. You're targeting the wrong people. So sales is all about pain and pleasure. The more pain that they're in, the more that they then need to take action. So here's how human behavior works. The pain must outweigh, so the pain of the status quo must outweigh the pain of change. Otherwise they'll stay put. So maybe they're experiencing pain. They don't like their house anymore, don't like their neighborhood anymore. But if the pain of buying at today's price, today's interest rates is more painful than staying put, they will stay put. The pain of the status quo must outweigh the pain of the change. So who's in the most pain? Right? So I'm going to target, okay, like if we look at right now, number one most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen, recorded history. Number one reason for divorce is financial hardship. So, okay, I'm going to target people going through a divorce, right? Probability of them needing to sell as they go through this new life change, very high. Going after absentee owners. A lot of people that bought investment properties that now rents are coming down, eviction rates are going up, hold costs are going up. Right? So if they want to sell out at close to peak pricing for things get ugly, now is the opportune time to do so. Urgency there. People 30 plus days plus late on their mortgage. One great thing, not one great thing, but yeah, it is great, I guess. But one difference I should say between now and the great financial crisis is every 30-day late at that time was pretty much a pre-foreclosure or short sale. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, there's a lot of people, as many, if not more, that have equity that are not underwater yet on their property that are they just can't hang on. Because it's not just that, mortgage rates have gotten so expensive. Escrow accounts have went up 64% from pre-pandemic levels. So insurance, taxes, right? So and people have to make a decision of, do I put food on the table for my family or do I make my mortgage payment? They're going to pick food every time. Right? So those are families that we can help. Probate, Carolyn's niche, right? Going after people that, unfortunately, people, pass in this lifetime and, families inherit that real estate. So I'm looking at and focusing on, okay, who has, that urgency where I can go after them, so like reloads, right? And then thinking of my market, if I'm going after the buy side, So we talked about listing sides, but then on the buy side, okay, like who's my market to win for? Now locals are like, screw this. The property that's 850 today or 750 today used to be 350 6 years ago. Incomes haven't kept up. They're like, that doesn't make any sense. But when I target, let's just say San Francisco Bay Area, they're selling a 3-bed, 2-bath, 100-year-old house, 1,200 square feet for 1.7 million. They no longer feel safe allowing their kids to ride, their streets down the road because of all the homelessness. And this is their words, not mine. They're able to sell that, come out, buy what feels to be like a freaking mansion, brand new for 850. That's in a gated community that feels safe, all of those things. To them, they're like, I can't believe that this is taking place. Yeah, right. So I'm being very specific with the reload markets I'm targeting, where it's like they're blown away at the deal. Like my market is a deal for them. So I'm targeting like, Seattle, Washington area, San Francisco Bay Area, LA County. Yeah, right. In other markets too, but those primary markets where it's a massive win for. So you got to be much more targeted. You can't shotgun things out anymore. We've got to operate like a sniper with a sniper scope. You know, um, with our targeting, who we're going after. And then from there, playing offense. So I call it strategic offense, right? So strategic is, okay, we're operating like snipers, not shotgunning things out there. So we're being hyper laser focused with our strategy. By offense, I mean, okay, I'm not waiting for crap to come to me. This is why I love like your probate strategies. You're not waiting for attorneys to spoon feed you deals. No, I'm getting the numbers. I'm calling them. Your fate is in your own hands. So we need to make sure that we're playing offense. So then, okay, hey, I'm going to do these activities. I'm generating my own business, where I can scale it up. My fate is in my own hands. So playing strategic offense. The other element to this is you got to be a great operator. He or she that's the best operator wins. So strategic offense and then a great operator. What do I mean by great operator? Treating your business as a business. You used to be able to wing it. 2012 through 2022, longest bull market recorded history, longest economic expansion, longest real estate expansion recorded history. You kind of show up, kind of work, kind of be consistent and print money. Now that's not the case. Yeah, like you got to know every single day what you need to do to win. If you're showing up at the office, you're like, oh, what am I going to do today? I'm ready to work hard, but what do I got to do today? You've already lost that day. You're already losing. Like you got to know exactly, okay, how am I generating my business? What activities, specific activities must I do to get that business coming in the door? You got to be tracking your data, making sure your systems and processes are on point. This is a business and you got to treat it as a business.
Yeah, this is so good, Josh, because everything that you're saying is really getting back to basics, and everybody that you mentioned, in those niches, divorces, probates, absentee owners, they're all niches, right? They're all people with specific life changes. And as long as you can just understand what those people are going through, and then appear yourself. Like for probates, I know that very intimately, right? Knowing what their problems are, knowing what solutions are available for them, and then knowing how to find them. All of those things that you mentioned. Divorces, it's a court record, right? Foreclosure, it's a court record. Absentee owners easily can find those on any type of title company can help you. All these kind of CRM databases, you can find those things. And that's for me what happened with probate. It's like I love like getting up in the morning and knowing exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Not getting up and being like, oh, where, what should I post today, or where could I go for business, and just dialing that in what you feel comfortable with, and then just having your strategy. I'm going to cold call, I'm going to door knock, or I'm going to send letters, or whatever a case. You talk about it so like easily, like it's just like so like natural to you. When agents partner with you, are you taking them through, step by step on how to like really, develop these systems and this training? Like, tell me a little bit about like how you help agents actually accomplish this.
Yeah. So the first thing is it starts off with, getting them to get extreme clarity on what you want, why you want, why it's important to you. Because I found that like, look, you got to be willing to push the hard days. And this is something that doesn't get talked a lot about in our industry, but some people talk about motivation, and it's like, look, dude, more days than not, I'm not motivated to do a damn thing. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do any of this stuff. I want to go binge Netflix. But you can't listen to your emotions. Like success is only reserved for those that are committed. Commitment means you got to do the necessary actions that you must do day in and day out, regardless of your emotional state. So I got to show up, do my actions, regardless of my emotional state, when I'm feeling positive, when I'm feeling depressed, sad, happy, good mood, bad mood. It's like I got to get shit done regardless, right? But if I don't have extreme clarity on what I want, why I want it, why it's important to other people, call it your why or purpose or whatever it is, right, like that, you're gonna have a very difficult time pushing those the shit, right? Like I've never met one successful top producer that hasn't went through insane amounts of shit storms. Like I know when I was new, I used to put all these top mega producers on these pedestals. Used to think that they had some genetic code that I didn't, but then after I started becoming a top producer and getting to know them really well, I'm like, hey, these are regular humans just like all of us. They're just human beings that have went through hell and back, but just kept pushing through regardless, never gave up, never quit, took those hard life lessons as great learning opportunities and just, refused to quit. Yeah, right. Like God does not reserve problems for a select few. We're all going to experience them. So I always start with that. Yeah, right. But then from there, once we know, okay, because once I know like where you're at and where you want to be, and not just be in 12 months, but where you want to be in 5 years and then where you want to be long term, that allows us very simply and easily to reverse engineer the architectural plans to get you from where you're at to where you want to go. Most people just don't spend enough time getting that clarity. So I have, about 5 hours of clarity exercise I walk people through to get that extreme clarity. Then we start working on getting the strategy plan together, getting the core systems in place, mastering the skill set, putting the schedule together so they can start executing, on these things. But then very quickly, because we're blessed to be in a business where you can go from zero to hero in 6 months. Yeah, right. Like, like I went from being never making more than $10 an hour to making as much as attorneys and doctors within my first 6 months of real estate. Not saying everybody has that same trajectory, but definitely in 12 months, you can absolutely change your income situation. I mean, and I did okay my first year. I know many, 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 I have a coaching client of mine that did 84 deals his first 12 months of real estate. Yeah, right. So, I mean, I've seen people blow past me and exponentially, right. So I'm not anybody special, right? But then very quickly, now then, okay, it becomes a thing. And I went through this where I was like, okay, yeah, I was making more money than I even knew that was possible in real estate, but I was more miserable than I was when I was broke. Because I'm working like literally getting up at 4 a.m., getting to bed at midnight, and health was going to hell. And I had married at that time, had our first daughter. Even though I lived like, I mean, I could almost throw a rock from my office to my house at that point. It'd have been a 5 minute walk. I'd go 4 days without seeing them, because they'd be in bed before I got home. I'd be up and out of the house for, right. So I'm like, okay, this sucks. Right. So then I had to buy back time, and that became, leveraging systems, processes, and then leverage, right? Like adding the right people at the right times to buy me back that time. So we got to make sure that we know what phase of the success cycle that you're on and what it is that you need to focus on, then do so that way we can get you, to that point. So then we get you to the next phase of that. So yeah, I mean, and again, everybody too has, because I get asked all the time, like, Josh, what is the best, like, what's the best strategy? I'm like, there is no best, right? Everybody's got different strengths. Everybody's got different weaknesses. I know, like, you love hitting the phones and you're great at hitting the phones. Well, I might have this agent over here who's petrified of the phones. So maybe for them, open houses or networking or social media, right? Like there's so many different ways. Everybody has different situations. So I want to take all that into account. Like financial situation, like maybe they're like, hey, dude, I'm broke. I have no money. I've been there more times than I can count throughout my life. So I get that. Okay, well, the good news is, okay, there's free ways to quit, create business. But then if somebody comes to me, this is a common thing I get. Well, Josh, do I want to leverage, YouTube, AI, Instagram? Okay, all great things. But then I ask them, well, how long can you go without a paycheck free and trouble? Oh, 4 or 5 months. Okay, here's the conundrum. Do all those things right, don't make one mistake. It's going to be about 12 months before you start seeing good, consistent business. So you're going to be broken out of this business and become a statistic before you see the fruit of those labors, right? So let's start with activities that are going to get you to solve your immediate goal, which is maybe they got to start within 4 months. They got to be making, at least a sale a month. Okay, let's solve that problem first. And that's going to be more prospecting based activities. Then once we've solved that problem, now let's incorporate, we're not going to stop that, but now let's incorporate the longer term plays like YouTube, social media. So we also got to look at their timeline. So, I always look at there's no best strategy. It's about identifying what's best for you based on your unique situation.
Yeah, and I mean, you've coached literally how many agents in your time now?
Shit, well over 5,000.
5,000 agents. So, I mean, you've seen all different personalities, all different strengths, weaknesses, everything. Tell us a little bit about that because now, there's a now way that people can partner with you and can actually work with you hand in hand. Because I think that right now in this market, like, again, we don't want to be negative or anything like that, but they need somebody strong like yourself that can actually pull them through this market not give them the pie in the sky. I mean, I've worked with a lot of coaches over my career, and some of them are just kind of like telling you like all the fluff stuff, they want to tell you like it's like almost like a get rich quick, scheme, if you will, like, oh, you just do this and then you're going to be super successful, and then you do it and you're wondering, why am I not successful? Why is this not happening, but I find that not everybody is really honest and transparent about the hard work, the long hours, what it really honestly takes to be successful. So I know that you've been GSD mode, like everybody knows, get shit done, how is it now that agents can work with you and walk with you through this market right now?
Yeah, so I never thought I'd become a coach because I always came from the mindset, just kind of like when I was in college. I'm like, man, these people they've just been in school their whole life. They've never been doers, and it was like you're either a doer or you're a teacher. And all my mentors have always been those that have done at a high level, that raise that level of expertise where I could get the knowledge from them. But it just kind of happened again on accident, right? Like meaning that I had to, as I started building out my team and bringing on agents to my team, I had to get very good at, okay, I take this brand new agent that just joined my team and get them to make 20 grand a month within 6 months after splits. So I had to become a great coach to become a great, and whether you want to interchange that with coach, mentor, teacher, whatever name you want to call it, right? But I had to get really good at that so I could create a successful business. And then it just happened through demand where I just had so many, again, I never planned on getting into it, but I just started having so many people reach out and reach out and reach out, but I never felt good about, because for me to exchange my time, right? Like I got to the point where, hey, I charge you $1,000 an hour, and the hard part about coaching is when we really need the most help, we don't have the money. And then when we have the money, we don't always need the most help. So I wasn't able to really serve. So I've been looking for the longest time of like, what's the right vehicle where it's a win-win, and then I found that vehicle. It took me, 20 years of my real estate journey to find that vehicle, but now I'm here, right? And that vehicle is eXp. Now, when you guys hear me say that, and maybe some of you hear me say that and like, oh God, here we go again. Like, look, dude, nobody on this planet has talked more smack about this company than me. I thought it was the biggest joke on the planet, but I didn't get it. I didn't understand it until, the whole story of the teacher appears when the student's ready. Until I was at the point where I was now, like I always say, eXp didn't find me. I found eXp. Until I was trying to solve, the problem, not just for others, but for myself. When I was talking about that whole success trajectory, it's like, okay, number one is time, or, money. Number two is time. Number three is freedom. So to graduate from time, yeah, you need systems, processes, and leverage, but then to have true freedom. And every single real estate agent that I've asked, why'd you get in real estate? For the most part, it is, I shouldn't say every real, but the vast majority of them, it's, hey, I want to be able to make, a lot of money for me and my family, create more opportunities, but I want to have, more freedom in my schedule. Well, the only way to have true time freedom and financial freedom is through residual income. So then I'm looking at this vehicle. Not only does it allow me to solve, it's going to solve all the five phases, right? Because then we got legacy, then we got, helping others create their legacy. So I was looking for a vehicle that would allow, because here's the other thing too, is, my whole entire journey, like I've always seen this agents, where it's like they work their whole entire life. This is like the trajectory I see agents in my office for my 20-year journey of they work until Social Security kicked in. Then they made enough to get by, never to get rich, but enough to get by. Then Social Security kicks in, they pack up their little box, take their license down, but now they're still a prisoner where they're never able to, because in real estate we don't have pensions, we don't have 401ks. It's like there's a saying out there that real estate agents don't retire, we expire. So they're on the like the work till you die plan. So I'm looking at a vehicle that, okay, can not only allow me to hit my goals, but then can also allow my agent partners to be able to build, a true retirement, true exit strategy through stock, through rev share, if they want to take advantage of it, through different things. But then because of how they structured the model, it's really reverse coaching. Yeah, right. Like anybody that partners with me, I'm able to coach, support, train, mentor them and pour into them for free at no additional cost to them because eXp pays us out of their revenue. So it doesn't, like if somebody joins eXp, right, which is more lucrative, better splits than any other brokerage with better systems and trainings, even if you eliminate, my stuff out of it, so then I just looked at this as the best win-win. Yeah, right. I'm able to pour into them, support them, but the more I'm able to help them grow, okay, I'm getting a little piece of the pie out of everything that they close, not out of their pocket, but eXp's pocket. So, as as I really started breaking it down, I'm like, this is the first everyone wins model that I've ever seen. Now I know there's copycats out there, but I looked into those too because I didn't care if it was EXP or whom it was, but became very obvious very quickly to me that EXP was, hands down, they do it better than anybody else by far.
Yeah, and you've been with coaching over 5,000 agents and just being in the industry for over 20 years. I mean, you've seen all the different brokerages, you've seen all the different real estate agents working at all these different brokerages. So you have a really good working knowledge of what's available out there, what options are out there for real estate, and like you said, EXP does give you that opportunity where you're not just getting a commission check, but you're actually able to create, getting your stock, and you're also able to get, residual income through the revenue share program. And I love what you said about the agents that need the coaching can't afford the coaching. And the agents that can't afford the coaching think they don't need the coaching, and that couldn't be more true, And so this model really incentivizes you as the coach, to make your agents successful, and if they join with you and you're their mentor, and then they just fizzle out and are unsuccessful, then nobody wins, right?
Yeah.
And so it's literally, it's tied directly to, the mentor and the student. Whereas paid coaching, people can pay you, and they're not successful. You got, your money as being their coach, and you say la vie, So I think that just the investment that goes both ways, is it works so well, and people need to be with someone like you during this market, they need a strong leader that's going to give them like the school of hard knocks, like the conversations that people maybe don't want to have, right? Or they're saying, "Oh, Josh, you're being negative." Well, it's not being negative. It's the reality of what we're all in right now, and everybody needs to wake up and smell the coffee, and to have the opportunity to work with you. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of yours for years and years. You're like a celebrity on the YouTube, like and I watched your YouTube videos when I first got started. Like you're with the hustle, you know how to work hard, how to hustle, door knock, cold call, just put the systems in place, everything. So anybody that would coach with you, I mean, they would be for sure to get number one, get through this market. And actually, like you said, some of the most agents make the most money in these markets, because if you don't got thick skin and you don't know how to pivot, I mean, that first, breakdown that you did at the beginning, how you started with open houses, then you went to the foreclosures. That, I mean, you did so many pivots. Like I mean, that's incredible, and like you said, you did it with a mentor. You had a mentor, and not everybody, like you said, can pay for it. Or, there's not people really out here trying to show you what to do,
Mhm.
genuinely,
Yeah.
and my experience in being able to be in a close proximity with you from the Wolf Pack and through, Mike Sherrard and through our EXP group, it's been incredible. You've helped me a lot in the time that I've been hanging around you. Okay, so I know anybody that has the joy to join your program and to partner with you in EXP is going to be super successful. So
Well,
I'm gonna.
now the beauty is now we have co-sponsorship, right? So, they can, partner with me in a way, right, where they get full access to all my coaching training. Also, Mike Sherrard is the best in the world at social media, YouTube, and AI. But then co-sponsorship, now they can add you as a co-sponsor or you as a sponsor, me as a co-sponsor, doesn't matter. At least to me, where they get then, all of your amazing probate coaching training, which I think is the next big wave for the rest of our careers, plus what I offer. So now it's no longer, oh, I got to pick one. Now I get the best of both worlds and it doesn't cost them any extra.
Yes, yes, I'm really excited. And that's what I'm looking to do too, is look for agents that, like you said, this is a niche down market. And I think for the next, 10, 20 years, that, like you said, our careers, right? Like there's going to be people come after us, and who knows what the future of real estate will be, right? AI is going to take over. Maybe we're going to go to Mars and we'll all be living on we won't be living here anymore, but yeah, finding a niche and really, niching down and just specializing in something. Now buyer's agent commission is, basically out the door. You wouldn't believe how many of my own listings I've sold this year, Josh, where people are just coming directly into the open houses, they're contacting me directly. So, all the buyers agents out there, you really got to look into how can you go out and get business? How can you just be the, like you said, a storefront? I never thought about it like that. I've always taken a lot of pride in my listings, but it's your storefront. It's your inventory,
Yeah.
Um, one thing before we close out, I wanna ask you this. So you're married, you have 4 kids?
3.
3 kids, okay. How give us just some, I'm married, I have 3 kids, okay. I have a very busy life, I'm a woman, you're obviously a male, okay. It's a little bit difference there.
Yep.
But with working so hard and doing everything, how do you, I know balance is like, the wrong word here, but what could you say to agents in, right now when we really have to like throw ourselves over the edge more than we ever have? Like, what does that look like in your personal life and your family life of just kind of making this all work out?
So I never allow any of my agent partners to use time as an excuse because it's just that. It's just an excuse. So when we start breaking down, there's 168 hours a week. I'll hear people complain about time all day, but then I'm like, how many hours are in a week? Well, I don't know. When you say you don't have time, like, what do you mean you haven't done a time study? So this is where we'll break down time studies. So, I've always got, I'll get, a lot of pushback, about my work ethic and that I work 80 hours a week. But I'm like, okay, 168 hours a week, sleep 6 hours a night. I feel pretty damn good at 6 hours consistent a night. Right. So that's 42 hours of sleep. Work my 80 hours. Then maybe I work out 5 hours a week. Well, I still have 42 hours left over. What am I doing those 42 hours? You're telling me I don't have enough time, right? Most people just waste time on social media, watching bullshit on TV, or, like I don't go to happy hours. I don't, right? It's like I'm very laser focused on, again, because I know what I want. I know what season in life I'm in. It's like right now I got, 3 kids. They're all active. And, we've got soccer, we got volleyball, we got swim, we got band, we got, so it's like, hey, my social life, maybe not much existent, but hey, before this stage of life, before this season of life, I had a massive social life. Right now, this season, I can't. But I also know, what I need to do and what I'm going to regret most in this life. Like I know, okay, if I'm on my deathbed and I didn't, maximize time with kids or impact in business, those would be regrets in my life. But I know I'll never sit there and be like, oh, I wish I would have went to more freaking happy hours with acquaintances that I can't remember their damn name. Now, I'm not poking fun at this. If you love this, if you enjoy this, that's different, right? But to me, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna be like, oh man, I wish I would have went and swung some little metal thing at a little freaking white ball and hit it down. Like, so I'm very, very picky and choosy with what I allocate my time to. And I find that if you know what you want, you allocate your time to focusing on what is it you want, you cut out all the bullshit, you have plenty of time to do it all. Most just aren't intentional with the time that they have, right? So with that though, yeah, I mean, I operate by, a schedule. So much of what your success is going to be on what you say yes to and what you say no to. There was this article written by this, I don't know, this news guy. He was like a, what do you call that? Like a, I don't know what the people that write like news articles, right? Journalist. And so he's at this diner and he sees Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Bill Gates Sr. all sitting at a table together. And he's like, man, I got to go up and I got to ask him this question. So he introduces himself and he asks him, you got the threes of the most successful human beings to ever exist at that table. He's like, what's the key to creating success? He's like, they all have the same answer because they all said focus. But then he goes, then Warren Buffett followed that up with, and he goes, focus is knowing what to say no to.
Mm.
Right. So most people are thinking, what do I got to focus on? Right. I remember meeting Grant Cardone for the first time. This is like, I don't know, 14 years ago, like before he was like internet famous, but he was massively successful. And, I'm talking with him like, Grant, there's just like something that guys like you are doing that I'm not doing. Right. I really thought that like I was missing an ingredient. Like, okay, this meal tastes good, but if it adds salt to it, it's going to make it taste amazing. So I thought I was missing an ingredient. He looks at me, he goes, everybody thinks that. He's like, but you're focused on the wrong thing. He goes, success is found in elimination, not addition. Because what you need to become obsessed with is identify what or whom must I eliminate that's prohibiting you from doing the things you must do to create the success you want to create. Like it's the power is in the elimination. So yeah, I mean, I get up at the same time every day. I go to bed at the same time every day. I have a very regimented living by my schedule. You know, but during the different seasons, I identify what season am I in, what's most important in this season, and then let me build my schedule around that and say no to everything else.
Hmm. So it's not really so much balance. It's more so like you're doing these like, pushes of, maybe you're just working like crazy, 1 month, and then, you build in maybe for your kids when you have to go to their soccers or things like that. Because, even myself as a woman, working so hard, it's a little bit different. I know it's like a man thing,
No,
like
it is. I agree.
women, we have a little bit different. And sometimes as, you're working this hard, and, it's not easy, right? Sometimes when you're, making all the cold calls and you're doing the videos and you're doing all these things, you don't see that instant success, right? So it's not like, you're making the calls and it's like an ATM machine that the money's like you're clocking in hours, so you're working towards something, and so do you think that, that balance idea of just, you should be having, this time with your kids and this time with this, maybe it's more just like sprints of where you're just fucking banging it out, and then, you're gonna have more time in the future, or what's
Yeah,
your
it can be
looking at
like,
this one?
okay, like, when all the lockdowns hit, yeah, I was actually in LA during them. I was at a retreat with a mentor, and like we were off grid. Like I had no idea until I got to LAX that like the lockdowns even happened.
Oh wow.
But we didn't know what was going to take place. So I fly, but I get home and I'm having a conversation with the family. Hey guys, like you may not see me for a while for the next several months. We got multiple businesses, we got lots of employees, people that rely on us. I got to make sure our family's taken care of. So number one, I look at this is like, okay, now I'm old school. I'm like caveman, right? Like, okay, like if, if my wife's back in the cave to protect the kids, but my job is to go out there and bring food, like why would I come back to the cave if I don't have a kill yet?
Mm,
Right? Like people are so soft today. People care so much about comfort and they're so damn complacent. And, so like early on, like my mentor told me, he's like, dude, Josh, you want to sell home a week, you better set like an appointment a day, 5 days a week. So I was like, okay, hey, I don't deserve the right to come home at night unless I set an appointment. Right. That
mm,
was my philosophy. That was my mindset. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I mean, there's times where those sprints, and I've had several of those where it's like, hey, like we just, made some stupid decisions, lost everything, right? Well, then at that point in time, like, yeah, am I working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day? Yeah, because I got to do so to take care of my family. And then that's my highest, responsibility.
mm,
But then, okay, I hope, I've been through those seasons, right? But hopefully that's not like we're living in that all the time.
mm,
Right. But then from there, yeah, I mean, when people say balance, it's like, look, maybe in a day I'm not spending 8 hours with my kids, 8 hours in business, 8 hours of sleep. It might be, 6 hours of sleep, 10 hours of work, or 12 hours of work, 2 hours with my kids, right, hour with my wife, bed, right. When it comes to that. But then also like making sure like, there's quantity versus quality as well. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you have sprints, but I look at more things of seasons. Yeah, or it's like,
mm,
okay, like you got winter, you got spring, you got summer, you got like, look, I've had seasons where I've been able to take off a whole year and just spend it with my family.
right.
Yeah, right. Then I've had seasons where, yeah, I've had a grind because of that. And I'm in one of those seasons right now. Because again, now it doesn't mean I'm, absent. Like I work from home. I see my kids, through, whatever throughout the day and my wife. And, like, okay, Saturday is all day, the whole entire day with my son at a soccer tournament, and my wife. And, so it's not like that doesn't exist. But like right now, I'm in a season where, yeah, I'm way out of balance. Yeah, right.
Hmm.
I'm working way more now, but I'm still getting in the necessities. Yeah, right. Now, when I say out of balance, like, maybe once every 6 months we'll get together with friends or whatever. Like for me, like with so right, but like this part, like I don't give a shit about that. Like I know what I got to do for me, for my family.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that because so many of us have families, and when you don't have families, it could be a totally different ball game. But your family, your husband, you're a CEO of your family, your wife, your kids, and same with moms, so you can, sometimes moms can fall into that shame or like that mom guilt and stuff like that. And I think it's important that we surround ourselves with people that believe in hard work, and believe in that because it's what it takes, right? It's literally what it takes. I remember Grant Cardone speaking about him. He was like, "Man, your kids don't give a shit. They just wanna go with you to Starbucks. I take my daughter to Starbucks real quick, buy her a drink. She's happy, like that's it. Like it's true. It's those little moments, but I think sometimes it's good for people to hear that, because sometimes people can fall into that, that they're not spending enough time with their kids or they're not doing this or they're not doing that. And, they don't know in the real world what it really takes to be successful, you know?
Yeah, and if you look at it right now, like I talked about earlier with the haves and have-nots, right? Like I see the writing on the wall. Like look at everything. Like okay, imagine blink of an eye, it's 2030, right? Okay, Amazon has zero workers. You got fully automated, self-driving electric, cars, delivery by drones. They got robots for, right? So like our kids may not have the same opportunities. There's going to be a time where, you know, there's going to be mass unemployment. There's not, like so they're not going to have it's the world's going to be a lot different. Yeah, right. So for me, I'm doing everything I possibly can to set up residual income, passive income and build this up. So then that way, I can take care of my family in a different way than I've, maybe had to in the past. And this is stuff that I didn't think about 10 years ago,
Mhm.
because I didn't think that the world was going to be changing this fast. And I'm not saying it will or whatever, but with the writing on the wall today, like I think that anybody that's watching or listening to this can, probably for the first time in human history, I think this is why, a lot of people are so demoralized is, it's we're starting like it was always before like each generation had a little bit better than the previous generation.
Mhm.
Right. Like, and that's what you always want for your kids. Well, now I think we're all seeing it that hey, our kids' generation, they're not going to have as good of opportunities as we had. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at big picture of like what matters most. Right. Not just thinking about like, I can't think about just the now and the moment. Yeah, right. I got to think about like what do I need to do to position myself and my family for that long term in the best possible way I can, and go out there and make those decisions and make those hard choices. Right. Working when you're tired. Working when you're fucking not just tired but exhausted. Whatever. And look, that may not be for everybody. Like you can work 40 hours a week and do damn well in this business.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to do it faster for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh, you're amazing. Thank you so much. This has been incredible. Major success, but also a really cool person too. So I appreciate this and I want to fist pump you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an honor being here and jamming with you. This has been awesome.
Yeah, so all your information will be linked below and you want to connect with Josh, hit him up. You won't regret it. All right. Thank you guys so much. See you on the next one.